Hi, I'm Cal Kurtz, and over the past couple of weeks I've been looking into how late-night political comedy motivates viewers to be more politically active. So I just want to talk about what late-night comedy is. So this is often self-named fake news, and this includes The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, The Colbert Report, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, and Saturday Night Live, which I think a lot of those have been covered so far by other people's presentations. And I found this to be very relevant because I personally love The Daily Show and Last Week Tonight. And also, the anchor of The Daily Show, Jon Stewart, he recently retired after 16 years. His last show was August 6, 2015. And also I think it's relevant because with the Republican and Democratic debates being recently, and they were often talked about on these shows, so I think all of these add to just why this is so important. So the main three things I want to talk about are the audience, so who is the targeted audience of these shows and why this audience is so targeted and why this is important. I also want to talk about the humor, the comedy of how this comedy really pulls in the audience to pay more attention to what's being said. And finally, I want to talk about politics, about how the political comedy that is used motivates the audience through the humor to be more politically active. So just so we know who the audience is exactly. The main audience of late night shows, especially The Daily Show and The Colbert Report, are Americans ages 18 to 29. So out of Americans this age, 26% of us watch The Daily Show or The Colbert Report regularly. So that's a really large portion of even just like the people in this classroom. And also I specifically targeted Bernie Sanders and how he has been on all of these shows. And Bernie Sanders was popularly talked about because he has the support of the younger generation. So really why this is important is that these shows, in comparison to other news broadcasts, really focus on what the younger generation of Americans, what they find to be fascinating. And that's just another way that they pull in the audience to pay closer attention, is that they really talk about what many young viewers find to be important. In 2004, people under the age of 25 were half as likely as older voters to say that they were very interested in politics, and only about 1 in 6 strongly supported one of the major political parties. So in comparison to previous generations when they were our age, we are far more apathetic towards politics than any other generation. We really, in comparison, are not politically active and really want to run in the opposite direction of anything political. So this is really important because the audience of these shows is apathetic towards politics. So why are these shows so dead set on trying to convince younger Americans to be more politically active? Because really the average watcher of The Daily Show or The Colbert Report is younger, male, more educated, liberal, and in comparison more politically active than others his age. So that's really important in that these shows, their main goal is to engage an audience that doesn't normally care about politics. So now we know why the audience is so important. Now I want to look into how these shows really captures the attention of this apathetic audience. And how can I hit play? Do I just...
Today, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders kicked off his campaign for president.
He's a long shot.
Long shot.
I don't think he's going to be taken too credibly.
Bernie Sanders is a socialist, for God's sake.
A thick Brooklyn accent.
He's 73 years old. He looks 91.
He's a loon, isn't
He owns a VHS copy of Tootsie. Last one seemed like kind of a weird slam. Tootsie's a fine film, certainly the best movie that's been released publicly. You know, but the point is, Sanders isn't little, and he wears socks on his hands and gloves on his feet. He butters his bread with Vaseline. He lives in a pineapple under the sea. If Salvador Dali, an actress who's had a child, and that child was raised by schizophrenic howler monkeys, it would be Bernie Sanders. Give me a taste of this crazy wacko cuckoo bird.
So that's all I'm going to be able to show. But, humor. So humor is how these shows first engage the audience. So in this sense, a humorous message may be more persuasive than messages that are blatantly intended to persuade, such as marketing or political advertisements, because the viewer is less likely to put up cognitive guards. that sometimes come up when he or she recognizes that they are the target of attempted persuasion. So we have an audience that already doesn't want to hear about politics to begin with. So how do you motivate this audience to listen to what you have to say? Well, you entertain them with humor. And this humor is also specifically geared towards the audience. Like I think everybody in this room knows who lives in a pineapple under the sea.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yes, and he said if Salvador Dali and Dr. Seuss had a child. So we all get those references. So the humor is definitely really directed towards who the viewer is intended to be, just to further encourage the viewer to be more attentive to what's being said. And of course, I won't be able to show the rest of it. But what's really interesting about Jon Stewart's entire point in that is not necessarily that Bernie Sanders is a good candidate or a bad candidate, or that you should vote for him or should not. But it's more, he actually talks about how the media has portrayed Bernie Sanders as a loon, but in reality, he's just a really genuine guy who's really passionate about what he believes, which in comparison to what we're used to, like Hillary Clinton, who is someone, as Jon Stewart says, who really just takes what focus groups tell her that the audience wants to hear and spits it back to them so she can be more popular. So I think that was interesting because Jon Stewart would say something like that, would really critique society instead with Bernie Sanders in comparison to other news broadcasting systems that we are all used to. And the interesting thing about ABC News and CNN and all of these, one of the biggest critiques of late night comedy is that it doesn't contain any actual facts, that it's all just making fun of different characters. And that's how really they move the audience to have opinions. This is actually false though. An associate professor in communication at the University of Delaware did a study and found that not only do these shows spend longer time on a particular subject, these late night comedy shows spend a longer time on a particular subject in comparison to these shows, but also they have the same amount of substantial information. So the claim that late night comedy is just making fun of people without any factual basis is completely false. Furthermore, this is a picture of SNL making fun of the Democratic debate. And what was interesting about this and all other types of late night comedy is that the jokes in these shows you wouldn't understand unless you already knew what was happening in politics. So, like, I for one watched the SNL skit of it, found it kind of funny, and then was like, wait, what actually happened in the Democratic debate? And went to watch it because a lot of the jokes you would not get unless you already knew what was happening. So, just to reiterate, research has found that regular Colbert and Stewart watchers are significantly more knowledgeable about politics than most other audiences in the same age group. So this audience that we already know is apathetic towards politics, doesn't want to know about politics at all, that these shows are able to, through humor, motivate the audience to listen, and is able to encourage them not only through the actual facts presented, but also through just the humor and the satire to go out and discover more about politics and to be more politically knowledgeable than others their age. So.